So hello everybody. How are you? I hope everybody's okay. I hope everybody's feeling good. Today is already December 1st, 2021. Our wonderful guest is Nick Paul. He is a great teacher. He's been teaching Shiatsu over 30 years. So he's going to talk about Zen mind, Zen Shiatsu with Seiki. And let's start. Let's put our both hands together and meditate. Namu Shinyo Ichinyo To Toki Miho Tokeo Nenji Tate Matsuru Zangi Zange Rokkon Zaisho Metsujo Bonno Metsujo Gonsho Om Saraba Tatagyata Hanamana no Karomi. And let's reflect ourselves. How's our yin-yang energies going? Are we more balanced? So Nick will help us how to balance our mind, how to balance ourselves by using clean language. The language has the power. Language has the vibration. So we have so much to learn from Nick. Thank you, Nick.
Sure. Are we ready?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
You want to stop screen sharing? And then I can, yes.
Perfect.
Begin. Okay. Thank you, Kumiko. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The theme for today is emptiness and not being afraid of emptiness. And what is emptiness? What does emptiness mean? If emptiness is like one of the core concepts of Zen, the Zen approach to being alive, what is it? I've got a great deal of inspiration over the years from the Zen priest who came from Japan to San Francisco in 1959, Shunryu Suzuki. And I find that his way of talking about these things makes such sense in a very embodied way. So first of all, I'd just like to thank everybody who's turned up on this Saturday to be on the Zoom. And what we'll be looking at is how can we use language in a way that brings us to the body rather than using language in a way which it's frequently used at taking us away from the body into abstract concepts. So we're looking at Zen. We're looking at what does Zen mean in the title Zen Shiatsu. And we're looking at how language can connect us to, between yin and yang, instead of going off into extreme yang abstract thoughts. How can we use language to come back to the body? And I've got some slides for you, but I would like to keep things as open as possible so that whenever I can maybe give a little demonstration of how I might be using clean language, then we can do that and it'll become sort of a bit more alive. So let me just share my slides to begin with. Zen mind, Zen Shiatsu. So how can clean language help us in working with chi, with ki? And this character here, Chinese character for thought, is interesting because at the top here you have a character which basically means head, and down here maybe you recognize this is a Chinese character for heart. So straight away, if we're looking at the idea of thought from the Chinese medicine point of view, we're being told it involves the head and the heart. You can't think without your heart, and your heart is in your body. If you're just thinking up here in your head, it isn't real thought. So coming to Shunryu Suzuki, this is his most famous quote from his first best-selling book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which he put together with enormous help from some of his keenest students who recorded his talks, edited them, and persuaded a publisher to publish them with no idea what would happen. And they ended up selling in millions in many languages. So this quote, very famous. Have you heard of it? Put your hand up if you know this quote. I'm sure you do. Some do. Okay. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and in the expert's mind, there are few. Now, what does that really mean? What did he mean when he said that? Well, actually, he meant a few different things, I think, as he usually did when he spoke. It kind of sounds like the beginner's mind is better than the expert's mind there. But obviously, we need both. We need both kinds of mind. What this beginner's mind is a good question. Why is it beginner's mind one of these foundational qualities of Zen? And what is the expert's mind? So we're just going to explore that a little bit in a practical way. First of all, here's what I'd like you to do. The first exercise is what happens when we meet the world with our expert mind? What happens when we meet it with our beginner's mind? So coming back to the screen, here's what I would like you to do. And we'll see what happens and share the results. So first of all, let us just do what Zen is really all about, which is just sitting in silence for a moment. Get yourself comfortable, settle yourself, and begin that process of transition, because that's what it is. It's a process of transition from the screen to yourself, to your posture, your position, your sense of your weight in the chair or on the ground, on the floor. Softening your eyes or closing your eyes, if that's okay. And sort of noticing already this difference between expert mind and beginner's mind. If you do Shiatsu, you have a sort of expert mind about how to settle yourself. There's a kind of procedure that you go through, and you know it. And it brings you to your body. And the interesting thing is that when you do that, when you really connect with your body, you're kind of handing the controls over to your beginner's mind. Because one thing we know about the beginner's mind is it doesn't really function until you are connected to your body. So taking your time to do that and noticing that interesting sort of shift between, oh yes, I know how to do this, and oh, that's how I am right now. So just sort of noticing how you are as you engage, you begin a relationship, you begin a kind of dialogue, a connection with your embodied self. What kind of signals start to come back to you? And then letting go of that, opening your eyes again gently, having taken in that sense of your more embodied self. Now we're going to come to the expert mind, and we're going to sort of crank it up a bit. And if you have a pen and a piece of paper, it helps, but you don't have to have one. Just get a piece of paper, and here's what I want you to do. Wherever you are, just start looking around the room, things close to you, things far away, looking at things and giving them a name, noticing what that thing is called, and then writing it down. You need to make a list of at least 10 things. So you're really getting your brain into this thing about, oh yeah, what is the name of that thing? What is the name of that thing? And you write them all down, almost like you're making a to-do list. And as you start naming and noticing and naming these things, also bring in that bit of the expert mind that sort of makes little judgments about things. Is that thing okay? Does it need repair? Does it work properly? Do I wish I'd never got it? Am I happy with it? Is it a beautiful thing? Just sort of name things, make judgments about them. Yes. And get to about 10 things that you can name and judge. I like it, I don't like it. I'm neutral about it. Oh yeah, that one, yes, that needs dusting. And right, I've got 10 things. Have you got 10 things? Just take a minute to round your list off. And when you're ready, just coming back to the screen, my gallery view on, yes. So that was just amplifying a bit the expert mind, the thing that relates to things through their names and makes judgments about things, and possibly even makes a little plan of what I need to do about that thing. What is that exercise like? How are you right now? Where's your sort of focus, your energy, your key? What would you say? Just unmute yourself if you have a sense of something different from that little exercise. Personally, I've got a sort of sense of energy spiraling around the side of my temples from doing all that. Kirsten, what about you?
Yeah.
It's up here. Yeah. Anybody else not up here? Or what's going on? Julia, what's going on with your sense of your key?
I felt that my expert feeling was quite centered and focused and clear, but on the other hand also very narrow, very narrow. I felt here in the chest, I felt it quite limited, and then when I started to feel the beginner's mind, it changed and it got me more grounded. And the energy went down to my hara and to my feet. I felt more centered and I felt very wide and fluid and very soft and very light. So quite open, quite open.
How did you make that shift to beginner's mind?
I don't know. I just resonated with your words, how you tried to guide us a little bit, and then it suddenly changed.
Oh, that's very interesting, because my tone of voice is actually in beginner's mind tone. If I'd been an expert mind, I would have been talking more like this. I want you to look around the room now and look at 10 different things as quickly as you can. That would be much more like an expert tone of voice. So you're ahead of the game, Julia, because that's the next part of the exercise. Is now, if you are ready, come back to yourself. Let's just come back to sitting for a moment. So noticing whatever shift in your energies, your key happens with the expert mode, just settling yourself back again into your sitting bones or your spine or your breath or wherever it is you take yourself. Allowing your natural sense of that transition again, as you let your expert mind take you into a more embodied state, and you begin to notice your beginner's mind coming to meet you, as it were. Noticing what that's like for you. And now, when you open your eyes, just allow them to be soft eyes. Notice what they come to rest on. Just allow your eyes, your gaze to sort of move gently around the room. What's there within reach. And just noticing whatever it is that sort of jumps out at you, whatever it is that wants to be known, without giving it any kind of a name. Just looking at it, maybe reaching out, touching it. For me, I found a pair of glasses here. But encountering this object as if you had never seen it before in your life, and as if it was the most extraordinary and wonderful thing you could ever possibly have discovered. And touching it, and feeling the shape of it. Noticing, maybe even if you were a baby, you'd be tasting it or smelling it. And being generally in awe of this extraordinary thing. Whatever it is that you're finding to be fascinated by, just discovering all of its qualities, the sounds that it might make, the weight of it, and what it's like just to be with this thing. What does it do for you? What does it mean for you? What is it like to be with this? And then when you're ready, putting that down, coming back to the screen. I just fallen in love with a pair of glasses. I've never had that relationship before. How did that work for you? What did you notice about just allowing your beginner's mind to meet this thing, whatever it was? What happened? Eva, let me ask you.
Oh, I was fascinated by the piece of paper.
Yeah, I saw.
The sounds and the texture, and I could see the light through it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, indeed.
Because I got lost in my imagination. I didn't hear what you were talking because I was listening to the sounds and looking. I was in that space, in that world, me and that object, the beautiful.
Lost in it. Exactly. That's one of the things that beginner's mind does. It just sort of takes us completely into awareness of something. Who got some other kind of response?
I felt much more relaxed.
Much more relaxed, yeah.
Yeah.
And whereabouts is that relaxed? That's a clean question I'm just throwing in. Whereabouts is relaxed?
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything else about much more relaxed everywhere?
Comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What kind of comfortable is comfortable?
Like not having to do something.
Like not having to do something. Yeah. that's one big difference between the expert mind and the beginner's mind, which Margot is going to be showing us a bit more later on. When you have to do something because someone's telling you, and when you don't have to do anything, and how does that open things up? And Julia, you were saying before, you know, you felt kind of narrow, I think you said, with the expert mind. What was that like when you opened up again into the beginner's mind?
Yeah, it was like kind of a big relief, and just like you mentioned before, that there is no expectation and no pressure from my side, you know. I just let it flow, and I realized that with the expert mind, I'm more in the concepts with the meridians and the 5 elements and so on, and other theories are in my head. But when I just be there with a beginner's mind and flow and just listen to what's there, it's kind of a big relief. Yeah.
Big relief.
Yeah. And
Big
it's
relief.
getting wide. It's wide.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's wide. Where is this sense of relief? This kind of wide relief.
As the other girl mentioned, it's everywhere, but in my feeling, it's more in the hara, and I'm getting my energy more into the ground, more into the feet, connected with the earth. Yeah. Because my energy normally tends to get up very easily. Is more up, and very but
So
this is very grounded, I'm very grounded to earth. Yeah.
And you're already doing that before when you shifted from expert to beginner's mind in the exercise. And Kamiko, can I just ask you, because you talk about intuitive shiatsu, just wondering what your sense of the beginner's mind was there.
Oh, beginner's mind? I feel like, oh, everything looks good, everything's good, looking good, and feels like a happy feeling. And the expert mind start to say, oh, this is not good, oh.
Yeah.
So I try to relax and merge myself and sit comfortably, focus on more back of my body, and then feel better. The beginner's mind was more looking outwards and to see what's going on. And the expert mind is more like a sensing from the back.
Sensing from the back. Yes, that's interesting for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Kamiko. Now I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay. Come back to my slides. So that's what we discover when we kind of amplify the one or the other. And of course, we know now, neurologically speaking, that the verbal mind, which has a big relationship with that expert mind, tends for most people to live in the left hemisphere of the brain, and the access to embodied intelligence tends to inhabit the right side of the brain much more. And what shiatsu is all about, in one sense, is just getting those two sides of the brain to meet each other on equal terms. And what doesn't usually happen is, well, that's exactly what doesn't usually happen, because the expert mind, the verbal mind, in everyday life tends to dominate. And it does these 3 things, which Kamiko just mentioned. First of all, it gives things a name, and it doesn't relate to things unless they have a name. Unless it can recognize that thing, it doesn't really relate to it. Secondly, it tends to make judgments about things, which is a necessary thing. If we didn't make judgments, we probably wouldn't last very long, stay alive very long. But and of course, as practitioners, we need to make professional judgments all the time. And the third thing that it does is it prepares a to-do list. It decides, what have I got to do about this? And that, I think Julia was saying, that sense of I don't have to do anything comes very much more from the beginner's mind. and the expert mind. So let's just have a look at something Shunryu Suzuki said. He was a master. I think one reason why his work became so popular is because he was a master of putting things in incredibly simple ways that anyone could observe. And this is a lovely quote from him talking about why in Zen do we sit in this Zazen position, this rather painful posture. But have a look at what he says. When I have the left foot on the right side of my body and the right foot on the left side of my body, I don't know which is which. So either foot may be the left foot or the right foot. That's absolutely such a beautiful little observation of how it actually feels when you sit in that position. So even though we have a left leg and a right leg, they become one. And then he makes this point. This is the most important teaching, not two and not one. Our body and our mind are not two and not one. They're both, they are both two and one. And that really is a lovely sort of physical, neurological statement of what Zen is all about. Always offering you the paradox, always saying, you've got, here's the truth and here's the opposite of the truth, and you've got the both of them are true. And that's where the Zen mind sits, in a place where there is no real answer that an expert mind can give. So that's one aspect of Zen. And it takes us into this sense of embodiment. There's a great book called Touching Enlightenment by Reginald Ray, who was one of the original white people, you could say, who brought yoga and this very deep somatic sense to the West, somatic sense of what Buddhism is all about. And I do recommend reading this book, Touching Enlightenment. The more we descend into our body, the more we uncover a vast and expanding interpersonal world of connection with other people. And the more we sense and experience others as inseparable from ourselves. This is really the fundamental sort of second message. Yes, when the right leg and the left leg are crossed over, we don't really know which is which, and we have a sense of oneness in the two-ness of it. And the more we get into our body, the more we don't really know what is me and what is that other. The more we kind of experience ourselves as inseparable. And of course, in Shiatsu, that's exactly what we're doing. We're touching, we're moving in an embodied way ourselves. We're inviting the other person to become more and more aware of themselves in a fully embodied way. And then this field of connectivity begins to contain so much information. It's not surprising that we begin to intuit things about what's going on for the other person. So coming to another definition of beginner's mind, again from Shunryu Suzuki, we come back, step back again with that sense of embodiment when we have no thought of achievement, no thought of self. We are true beginners. Then we can really learn something. And he says, this is also the real secret of the arts. Always be a beginner. Suzuki himself was very good calligrapher. If I just hold that up, you can see on the front of his book, that's one of his pieces of calligraphy. And he was very, I think he was very interested in the arts as an example of Zen mind. And of course, in the Japanese tradition, the arts are a natural part of the Zen approach. Here's an example from very important, very telling example, if you like. I don't know how many of you have heard of Musashi, Miyamoto Musashi. Certainly Kumiko has heard of Musashi, because if you're Japanese, nobody hasn't heard of Musashi. He's like Shakespeare or something if you're English. The most famous samurai, 17th century, a contemporary of Rembrandt, you could say. But having mastered the art of the samurai, he then, something clicked in his mind and he thought, if I can master one thing, I can master anything. And he did. He became an extraordinarily fine craftsman of all kinds of things. He became a superb painter, superb painter. He was invited to be involved with architecture and landscaping projects by the lord that he was associated with. And finally, towards the end of his life, he wrote a classic book on the martial arts, the Book of Five Rings. But this picture here, I find so eloquent when we come back to that Zen concept of emptiness. This is a screen, a large screen that would be set up in a room, which he painted. And those are geese flying, but nearly the whole image is empty. And the movement of the geese through the air and the way they're in a flock flying together gives you a sense of movement through emptiness. For me, that is a beautiful depiction of what emptiness really is all about. And as a martial artist, that's one of the things he stressed in his book, to be completely empty when you face your opponent, so that you're resonating, picking up more and more about what's going on for your opponent, which is kind of what we try to do in clean language. And another example of it here is the absolutely brilliant Japanese concert pianist Mitsuko Uchida. Here's what a critic, a music critic, said about her. This is how I first heard about her reading this review. She doesn't get in the way of the composer's intention or impose her own will on the music. As a performer, she truly listens. And by listening, you imagine she allows you to hear what Mozart was hearing inside his own head. There's so much in there. When I read that quote first, I just was stunned, thinking, well, that's how I think about Shiatsu. And it's in various ways. As a performer, she truly listens. For me, it was many years ago when I learned that quote, but I was just trying to find my own way in Shiatsu, and that really did it. It was a very Zen thing. If I'm listening, how can I be performing? But actually, when I'm doing Shiatsu, I'm performing, and what I'm performing is listening. It's a wonderful paradox there, but absolutely true for me of what Shiatsu is all about. And then you imagine she allows you to hear what Mozart was hearing inside his own head. That's what we're doing with clean language. When somebody says something, we listen to what they say. We take a key word from that and we offer it back, so that that person can hear what is going on inside their own head in a way that they probably didn't before. And the miracle of clean language is that when you do that, when somebody says something very simple, like, I've been feeling unusually anxious for the past 3 weeks, and I don't know why. And you just go back, you just offer that back, and is there anything else about unusually anxious? Often a person's response is, gosh, yes. They go deeper inside. It's an invitation to go beyond the label of the expert mind and to begin to get a sense of what the embodied sense of their kind of unusually anxious might be. So since we need to move on, I will just get to the clean questions, and then we can begin practice with Margot. So here's Shunryu Suzuki's take, which for me is a beautiful description of clean language. How you listen to, when you listen to someone, forget what you have in your mind. Forget what you have in your mind and just listen. If your mind is empty, it's ready for anything and open to everything. And when you ask clean questions, your mind needs to be open to everything, because what the person says in reply to your question will surprise you, and it will also probably surprise them, because you're going to a deeper level of awareness below that verbal expert mind knowledge. So here are a few clean language questions. You've already heard me asking them. if we do a little exercise now to lead into the practice, Margot, these are the kind of questions that we'll be asking you. First of all, when we sort of come back to settling into a meditative place and noticing your body, just what draws your attention and what's it like there? And whatever keyword or phrase comes up for you, or maybe it's an image, or maybe it's just a sensation, it doesn't actually have a word, just notice what that is. And we'll be asking you these very, very simple questions. If we could say whatever it is, it's a something, what kind of something is that? And where is that? Or if they've already told you where it is, where exactly is that something? And is there anything else about that something? And then finally, and that something is like what? Or when there is that something, you're like what? Okay, so exercise 2 is our Daoyin practice, which Margot is going to lead us in. Tiger admires its terrible claws. It doesn't sound it's not as bad as it sounds. But just to prepare us for that, Margot, shall I just bring us back to sitting, and then you can take us into the practice?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. And if you're watching this afterwards, watching the recording, do look at Margot's 5 Lights session, because there she takes you through some wonderful Daoyin practices without the clean language. Here we're bringing the clean language to the Daoyin just to notice what happens that's extra. And Margot can speak for hours about how working with clean questions has made a difference. Would you like just to say something about that for a minute, Margot, before we start?
Oh,
just to introduce
sure.
you.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I just want to thank, this presentation is so beautiful, and it's really resonating for me. So I appreciate what you shared. I just taught a class of metaphor and movement just before I came onto this session. And it was a class that eliciting metaphors during yoga practice. And these were people who practice yoga for many years. So they're very expert at their yoga practice. And we were doing a simple movement, which we're all gonna do, side to side. And at the pause during the movement, I asked just to notice as they're moving side to side like this, you're like what? And we just kept going for a little bit longer, because sometimes it takes a little while for the words to come. If any words are going to come, if an image is going to come, it might take a little bit. Sometimes they pop right up. But as you're moving like this, you're like what? Just see if something comes up for you. Or just enjoy the feeling of moving side to side. Or maybe it's not enjoyable. What sensations arise for you as you move, or that you notice, if any?
Yeah. Sometimes the metaphor comes, it's so obvious you kind of don't want to go with it, but you do go with it. The thing is, do go with it, because it's what's come up. And that's the Zen approach. So for me, I'm an upside down grandfather clock. This is the pendulum swinging back and forth. But then my expert might say, oh, that's very obvious. That's a kind of a cliche. But then you just bring in a clean question. Well, is there anything else about that upside down grandfather clock? And suddenly everything starts to change for me. But as you practice that yourself, just notice what happens for you, whatever comes up, and asking, is there anything else about that?
I'm a cane by the lake.
Sorry, Eva?
A cane, grass, a cane
Oh,
in
yeah.
the lake.
In the lake. I like a reed, a grass in the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And is there anything else about that cane of grass in the lake.
I was thinking about the water, if it's clean or if it's like at the shore, at the lake.
Yeah. So that takes you into the water, yeah. And again, noticing what's happening to yourself, whatever, yeah.
Calm, but the storm is coming.
It's calm, but the storm is coming. So deeper and deeper, more and more layers of information begin to emerge as you ask yourself these questions. That's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can come to pause the movement. So just as Nick said, layers and layers come. Just in class, one of the people was very new to this practice of weaving in clean language into the experience of movement or touch. And so when I invited them to share their metaphors, if anybody came up with one, she said, no, I didn't get one, except I thought of myself as a metronome. And then I said, well, I asked a different question. I asked her if there was a relationship between being a metronome, being like a metronome, and her practice of yoga. And she said, no. And then she said, actually, yes, it's reminding me that my tempo is slow and I want to go slowly during my practice. And that was a huge revelation for her, because if you've ever taken a typical yoga class, you go pretty quickly through things. You don't really settle into the experience. So that, and Nick, you asked me about my experience with using metaphors.
That's a really important little point there to notice. She said no. Both times you asked her a question, said no. There was a metaphor? No, except. And that first answer always comes from the expert mind. The expert mind saying no, because it didn't get one, because that's not the way it works. Except, I'm a metronome. And then you ask her again, she said no, but that's how you're hearing this communication beginning to happen inside a person between their expert mind, which only lives in the world of labels and names, and the beginner's mind. So if you're ready to take us into the tiger and admiring claws.
Yes, so I'm going to walk you through it by the rules, how we're supposed to do it. Then we'll see what happens when we just let ourselves go. So make sure you're comfortable if you're sitting in a chair or if you're on the floor, if you need to stretch out a leg, or if there's anything that would help you feel more at ease coming back to sitting in a settled way. And then we're just going to take our hands to rest in front of our chest with your palms open, and very simply just admiring your hands, your beautiful hands. Then you can look at the backs.
Noticing,
and as you're
noticing, is it your expert mind or your beginner's mind? Are you assessing the quality of your skin, or are you just making a relationship with your hand?
Exactly. And while you're sitting here looking at your hands, just notice that your hips and your legs are somehow supported by the ground. And if it's possible, to let your shoulders relax down your back as you look at your hands, and you're rotating them. And we're going to begin to make this rotation so that the pinkies come toward each other and then point toward the head. So the little fingers are pointing towards your head and your thumbs are pointing away. And then you go the other way, where you turn your palms away and your thumbs are going away from you and your pinkies are coming back toward you, your little fingers. So just rotating your hands in that fashion. And you might be thinking with your expert mind, oh, this is activating small intestine channel and maybe the lung channel as you rotate. Then as we turn the palms toward the face, we're going to start to turn the body to a side. It doesn't matter which side, left or right. And then begin to turn your palms away and stretch your arms out long. It's okay if your elbows straighten, but they don't have to. And you're looking at your hands, and then you bend your elbows and begin to turn your palms towards your face and come back to center. And we'll turn to the other side now. Turn the palms away and press the arms straight or almost straight, whatever feels good to you. And then turn the palms back and come back to center. So you're rooted on the ground with your hips, you're turning, you're stretching your arms, you're pressing your hands away, and then you're rotating your palms to look at them as you come back through center. And just keep going like that. You've got the rules down now. Breathe as you go. You can inhale to center and then exhale to push. Inhale as you come back to center and exhale as you twist and push. Maybe it's not pushing, maybe it's just stretching. And just keep going on your own. The more you go, the more you're going to find that you start to relax, and maybe you get a little playful with this movement. And you can ask that question as I'm stretching my arms and looking at my hands. I'm like what? Or what's this like? Or perhaps you feel a sensation that you're curious about. Is there anything else about that sensation? And just see if a metaphor for this movement arises. And then what happens if you turn your head away from your hands? For example, you press your hands to the left, but you turn your head to the right. As
I'm
your head.
dancing.
Say that again, Eva.
Dancing.
Dancing. Yeah, and what kind of dance is that?
Belly dance.
Belly dancing.
And all that beautiful, I'm sensing colors and jingles and smells, a lot of oriental scents.
Lovely. And then just come back and rest here, and we'll check in with each other. So you can hear from Eva had her senses kind of opened up, smells and colors and textures. Then this makes a big change in your physiology, what your experience is, that metaphor of belly dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes.
Nick, do you want to?
Yeah, has anyone else noticed a metaphor come up, or maybe a place in the body? For me, I was getting aware of the tightness, when I got into the full stretch, there was a tightness in my back, and I was beginning to ask some questions about that, but we didn't have time to go more into that. But the questions, even one question, loosened my muscles up a bit. It's amazing. Yeah. And I know this stuff, and I'm still amazed by it. So did anybody else notice something happening there, like a metaphor or some response if you ask yourself a question?
it was kind of like straining. It was hard work
Yeah.
at one time, and I felt it so like in my chest, so hard work. And if I looked the other way, away from my hand, then it was better. I got some distance to it, and then it sort of relaxed.
Some distance to it. So if I could
Yes.
ask a clean question, is there anything else about that distance? Especially if you do the move again, just can you put your arms back in the position and your head? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And there's distance. And when there's distance, is there anything
Yeah.
else about that distance?
Yeah, the distance feels so good. The
Oh.
distance is the distance is relieving me.
Relieving you.
Yeah.
What kind of relieving is that?
Taking away the stress.
And there's a movement there. Yeah, taking away the stress.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, thanks, Kirsten. You see, just a couple of questions it allows the person in the client role to get more sense of what's going on for them and what the deeper patterns are. And yeah, so back to you, Margot. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious if anybody else had if you noticed a difference between when you looked at your hands and when you looked it away. If you noticed any kind of shift in yourself.
Natasha's
Opened up the space.
space, yeah. And what happens when it opens up the space, Natasha? If you take your time and put something else in the chat, opens up the space. You see, there are all kinds of questions we could ask about that. What kind of space? Is there anything else about that space? And so on. So where is that space? All kinds of questions. Just let those filter in, Natasha. And if you have anything else, then put it in the chat. Margot.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for participating. And one of my invitations in that class, the particular class I taught today, was just as Nick showed you some samples of clean questions. If you start to play with them in your day, no matter what you're doing, if you're writing or typing, you can tune into, gosh, even if it seems your expert mind is going, I know what I'm doing, I'm typing. But if you invite those questions to come in, well, while I'm doing this, what am I like? All of a sudden you're playing a piano or tapping on honey on your face. I don't know what would come up, but it opens up the imagination, and then that has a whole shifting of in your physiology, which can be tremendous medicine for ourselves. And then, of course, if you're sharing this with your client, you get this whole other engagement of the nervous system in the process of healing, not just the touch that's coming from the outside, or even though you're meeting what's on the inside through your touch. This just adds a whole other level of medicine and benefit.
And that is the Zen approach, of course. It's not just sitting in meditation for hours in the day. It's about Zen this is one thing Suzuki said, Zen is not sitting on the cushion. Zen is what happens in your everyday life. So when you can be typing in your expert mind and have your to-do list and be completely in that very narrow focus that Kirsten was talking about at the beginning. But when you bring the beginner's mind gently into that everyday stuff, typing, walking down the pavement, and so on, sidewalk, then everything opens up. And that was one of the things that Shunryu Suzuki was so good at doing in his lectures, just talking in such a beautifully everyday way about it. I think I've got an example here. If I can just take a minute to quote to you. He's talking about this difference between Zen mind and beginner's mind. And I've got to put my other glasses on now. And the example that he comes up with is so simple and so telling. It says, when you seek something, your true nature is in full activity, as if you were feeling for your pillow in the dark. If you know where the pillow is, your mind is not in full function. Your mind is acting in a limited sense. When you are seeking the pillow without knowing where it is, then your mind is open to everything. And you can just imagine Suzuki, that example obviously comes from his own waking up one night or being in the complete dark and not finding his pillow. He's feeling around for his pillow and suddenly he realizes, hey, I'm in beginner's mind because it's totally dark, can't see anything. This wonderful, very everyday examples of what beginner's mind is really all about. Beautiful. So, Kumiko, how much longer do we have? Just checking.
Yes, we have about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't planning that much, but anyway, let's let me just share my screen again. I just wanted to sort of think about how does this apply in our actual practice. So here is Shiatsu master Takeuchi, founder of the Yin style of Shiatsu. I don't know much about him, but I found out about him on the internet. So here's a picture of him at work. You can see that beautiful, focused expert mind, but at the same time, the beginner's mind is fully functioning. And this is what he had to say about the kind of things we're talking about here. For most people, meridians and ki are unfamiliar concepts. They're not really going to be helpful when you bring them into talking to your client. What is important, what the person says about how they feel, how they think, how they perceive things. Or to put it another way, during the treatment, we often focus on the causes and their symptomatic effects, but few will attempt to address the patient's actions, motivations, negative thoughts, and so on. Acting on one's own behavior and life choices is the key and the lever to changing one's destiny. And I know, Kumiko, that's very much part of the way you think about Shiatsu and its place in the world. Those are the kind of things that we do when we bring some clean language into working with our Shiatsu clients, where the questions, especially the outcome question, which is what would you like to have happen, tend to allow the client, they invite the client to become the owner of their own situation and to tap into that internal, intuitive, embodied intelligence about what they need to get out of the problem that they're stuck in and how to connect with those kind of resources that are actually there inside somewhere but may have been ignored or may have been suppressed for a long time. These are the kind of things that clean questions do. And they give the person a sense of agency, as psychotherapists say, a sense of empowerment over their own situation. And at the end of the treatment, I always ask people, what do you know now about all of that? And again, it's an invitation, it's offering back to them, rather than me telling them some kind of recommendation, I think you should do more exercise or whatever. It's allowing their own intuitive idea of what would be right for them to try to come up. And just wanted to say, before I forget, Margot and me will be teaching a course starting in January, communicating with Qi. And so it's designed especially for us, for practitioners of Shiatsu, acupuncture, and other East Asian healing arts. Like Kumiko, you've had Adam Hellinger on, who's a wonderful Qigong teacher, and he's doing some fantastic work bringing clean language into the way he works with Qigong. So we'll be starting that middle of January. If you'd like to join us, that would be absolutely fantastic. If we have a little bit more time, then let's just come back to the gallery view. And I'd be very interested to hear how things are going for you. And hello, Jill, joining us from Spain. I don't know if you can hear or are on the mic or the camera, but it's nice to see you there. Yes, so folks, let me ask you, what do you know now about all of that? What kind of things have come up for you? What's resonating? Kirsten.
Yeah, what I found it so nice what you said, that you're not telling them your suggestions, but you're allowing their intuitive ideas to surface. I think that is such a nice thing. And also it takes the strain off me not having to give these suggestions, because I find it really hard and tiring to listen to myself giving the suggestions what they should do. It feels kind of false, or yeah. So I would really like to stop doing that.
Well, that it's true that often the suggestions we give don't actually land. They're, you know, it's like throwing seeds on barren ground. At least if the suggestion comes from the person, then when they come back next week and they say, no, I actually haven't actually got around to doing the exercise, then at least it's then that offer, yeah. So then you can begin to explore what are the things in the way of that. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else got any questions or comments on what you know now about all that?
Yeah, Natasha wrote to us. Nick, can you read Natasha's chat?
Oh, sorry. Natasha.
Yes.
That's why I like to teach beginners dance. Yes. I mean, dance is absolutely a perfect expression of beginner's mind. But that comment does remind me that what we're looking for here is the blend between the expert mind and the beginner's mind. So Natasha, in the performing arts, to the amateur eye, it may seem like this person's just playing the piano or leaping about the room as a dancer. But you know, one of the amazing things about Mitsuko Uchida is how deeply she studies not just the score that she has to play, because obviously you have to study that, but the background of the composer and how she, you know, brings scholarship and musicology to the performance, informing herself as an expert in many ways about this. But ultimately, the core of what she's doing there is coming back to pure beginner's mind. She actually says the performance itself, you're in a completely heightened state. You have no idea what's going to happen. And she says, you have to be a bit of an animal. And I allow myself to become a bit of an animal when I'm performing. And you can see her on YouTube doing exactly that. The expressions on her face is so amazing. As she feels herself into every emotion that Mozart or Beethoven, you know, was putting into the music, feeling them and expressing them and listening as she performs, listening to this music, allowing it to flow through her rather than imposing her will on it. But my point here is that we bring the expertise in as a servant to that whole beginner's mind performing presence. Yeah. So any other comments before we close, folks? Thanks.
Wonderful, Nick. It's wonderful.
Well, sorry, I've got, yes, before we finish,
Yes.
I've got one more.
Thank you, Nick. That was such a great presentation.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
my God, for your beautiful voice. Made me so right. You're so relaxed. Thank you, Nick and my God. It's such a wonderful presentation. And everybody, please join their workshop. Starts in next year in January. it's such an important aspect of our practice. How we say is more important. And we need to listen to our clients and also ourselves to say how much is enough, how much advice we can give, how much to do, how much not to do. It's entire such a beautiful art. So please enjoy his workshop, and he's been teaching through YouTube as well. He has a YouTube channel. So please, and also he has a wonderful book. We highly recommend everybody to read about it. Clean language. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kimiko.
everybody. Have
Thanks.
a great weekend.
Thanks everyone for coming along. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank
soon.
you.
See you next Saturday.
Yes, see you. So this is, I felt it's like a combination of yin-yang languages together with the music and a little bit of movement.
Yes, yes. Oh, he's great.
Sometimes I get lonesome, sometimes I get a little blue. He's got me walking around in circles and I don't know what to do. What good is love? You can't have it when you want it. What good is love if you can't own it? And love can be so good, and love can be so cruel. Love can make you happy, love can make you glow your cool. But when he puts his arms around me, way in the middle of the dark, you know he fills me up with a kind of light. Ooh, the man's alright. I'm in trouble. I'm in a world of trouble. I feel so helpless. I can't help myself. I don't want to see him, oh no, with nobody else. In many restless hours, I sit home alone. I wish I could meet him, oh, this man alone. But when he puts his arms around me, way in the middle of the dark, you know he fills me up with a kind of light. Oh, the man's alright. I'm in trouble. I'm in a world of trouble. I'm in trouble. I'm in a world of trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, Kimiko.